muscle it out over a long sprint, and then you have that feather power up, I think that's almost an unbeatable combination. And I don't actually think that the lighter weight sprinters have anything that offers them that same advantage than the heavier weight sprinters.
Yeah, you're totally right. So it's I mean, personally, I would definitely still be wanting an aero at the finish. I've just seen someone write why they may be riding all the trons, which I didn't think about. So thanks for that, Stephen, over on Facebook. Is that they probably don't have the right number of drops to be purchasing the disc wheels. So I kind of forgot that actually to get the disc wheels and the specialized S-Works Venge, you sort of need to be, level 30 plus or level 35 plus. So with the Tron, you don't actually need to be a certain level. You just need to have ridden 50,000 meters. So maybe that's sort of why we see so many Trons here. And I think we'd see that if we went and saw what these level of Zwift riders are. We do see them here now entering this area that we talked about before called Les Intestines. I'll just use a bit of my French pronunciation. And I just love saying that word. And you can see already the twists and turns are starting. And, Katie, I'm interested in the real world when you're cycling. What do you do in courses like this? Would you have had a team that would attack, or would you sit in? Because I think this is where you get quite close to what it would be like in real life.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of section on a course where it's a similar dynamic to if it's quite a strong wind. And that is you get your entire team to the front and you rotate amongst yourselves, essentially forming an echelon at the front just with your team, where everybody else has to hang on. Because if you find the right line through these S-bends, you can really pick up a lot of speed, and it becomes very hard for the other riders just hanging on the back. It's almost like an elastic band effect. And that's not too dissimilar in the Zwift world. I mean, you don't have the same, obviously we've talked about not having wind, but you don't quite have that same effect of choosing your line on the road. But what you definitely do have is the speed up and slow down effect of going around any corners. And I think teams can really maximize that. And a sneaky way to do it, if you think about, like driving a car, you do the opposite. Instead of slowing down into these little corners, you actually accelerate into them, because there will be some people who back off the power just a tiny bit as they go around. Those tiny microseconds, I mean, to quote Dave Brailsford and the old marginal gains, that's where it can really make a big effect.
Yeah, I've got to tell you now, I did my first crit race on the weekend, and in real life crit race. This triathlete actually went out and did a cycle race, and
right,
I got told I was like,
this one.
I made the front group, and then got told at the end that I was the worst cornerer they had ever seen. So I have a little bit of power and zero skill. I stayed upright on the bike, but these corners are giving me a bit of the cold sweats as to how I felt over the weekend.
Well, I mean, but you bring that up. That's a really interesting consideration, because we can't disassociate the psychological versus the physiological. And when you're looking at the screen, is there some part of you that is seeing the bends and is kind of reacting in the same way that you would if you were riding on the bends? I mean, it's a really interesting argument. The men are out on course, so we'll jump over and take a look at what's happening over there. The women 24.4 kilometres into their 47-kilometre race. It's quite a long race for them today. Doris Ma doing a brilliant job there for the Devil Kittens. So we're going to head over to the men's, and we've got, whoa, look at this, Anna. This is your bloke, Grasicki. What's he doing off the back there?
What has happened? So something's happened there. He is fighting his way back up. He was pushing those huge watts. He's burned a lot of matches to get back on. Who knows? I know he's had some technicals before. Maybe he just had a little power drop out, or maybe started I know it's like 3 a.m. for him, so maybe got a little bit distracted or a bit tired drinking his coffee or something, and he dropped off. But he's back in that main pack, and a much bigger pack than we've seen in the women's field. We're seeing someone just pushing off the front here. Not quite sure why they'd be going off the front this early on. Like we've said before, way better to just stick with the pack that's rolling through at around 50k an hour. We'll see who this rider is. I do, it looks like a ZWC rider. Potentially, there's a lot of riders to get through. There we go, a BRT rider, Hi CX. I haven't seen them before, but I do actually want to mention, Katie, we've got a bit of drama in the men's field.
Oh,
So,
I love a bit. Are we talking like Days of Our Lives, or are we talking like Bold and the Beautiful? I mean, what are we talking here?
Oh, it's like that. So we've got Relentless. Relentless has tried to poach one of the best ZWC members, apparently. And now they've actually taken rider Zaki Yama from World Elite Zwifters, who apparently was a very important member of that team, now riding for Relentless. So there's a little bit of poaching happening in this APAC league. So interesting stuff. I'm loving it. I love the drama.
Oh, I like that too. I mean, I think this is serious business. You know, we sit here and we commentate on all of these different leagues, but these are humans with real motivation, just like us, and it is serious business. We had a bit of a flashback to Sigrasiki being dropped. We're back up to speed now. Thankfully, they are all back together because we were quite distressed when he had a technical dropout a couple of weeks ago. Let's just take a quick look at the standings so we can unpack the motivations that might be happening out there today. For Div 1 on the top of the table, Team ZWC Attack on 116, Relentless 2 points adrift on 114, APAC B 109, very tight amongst those top three. Aeromasters in fourth on 88, Evo Savages on 84, Wes number 2, 83, Team ZWC Blast on 81, another tight cluster there from 4th to 8th. WTRL Pioneers on 69, Phoenix Cycling Collective 61, TBR 54, Tooth on 59 points. That's the APAC Div 1. The Div 2, Anna, the Division B, pardon me.
We've got TBR 50T on 115, just ahead of Aero Force on 112, Evo Barbarians a bit further back on 105, Cryogen 91, ZHQ Ravens on 87, AHDR Both Eyes on 84, Dirty Sprockets on 84 as well. That's a good little battle. Vision APAC on 79, Z Sundries 66, rounded out with MRR B at 58.
And in the C, we've got AHDR Chances on 115, TBR 46T on 111, so only 4 points there. TT1 Carbos 107, they are all still in contention. Cryogen LT'd on 100, AHDR Choppers 96, TBR 47T on 79, Cryogen Alto de Latras on 78, again another tight cluster there. MRRC on 75 in 8th. In 9th, we've got AHDR Chargers on 66 points, and in 10th, Cryogen Mount Hotham on 52 points. So fairly similar across all the leagues, Anna. It's fairly tight at the top. It's also very tight for 3rd and 4th place. Interesting little move here by Hoare. What I have come to learn very much, especially doing what are meant to be a fairly civilized bunch rides as opposed to races on Zwift, is sometimes, I'm going to say, you can have an accidental attack where you're not comfortable with your position mid-pack and you put in a bit of an acceleration and all of a sudden you find your avatar shooting off the front of the bunch without really meaning to. When you find yourself in that position, you've got to make a choice. Do you keep going with it, or do you take a moment's opportunity to recover because you've kind of overdone the effort? It's something that's pretty unique to Zwift because you don't accidentally attack IRL, but it does happen in Zwift, doesn't it?
Yeah, what I've noticed with these races more and more is you've got to be focused, so focused for the entire race, because there's so many just little things like that happen. With this one, with so many sprint points going on, there's just so many attacks. And, you know, I remember racing the New York race, just a little bit of sort of inattention and riders are gone and you just cannot get them back. So it's what's great about this league is there's so many people racing it. but I think sometimes you can get a little bit caught up in looking at a particular rider, like, oh, we want to beat a Z Sun or we want to beat a BRT. Um, and I think you might sort of lose a bit of what you're trying to do in the race, and then you find yourself on the front of the pack or the back of the pack when you don't want to be. And we can see the women's race, they're just hitting this reverse petite QOM. There's no points at the top of this, but I think it will end up being decisive, and you can see all those trons drift into the back as we see, I think, the Specialized, the bike that I would choose for the ride, with Davidson dropping off. What do you think about that, Katie? She's 4 seconds back now.
Yeah, that's a tough one for Davidson. I mean, we know that she's got really good legs when it comes to power and acceleration. I'm very complimentary of her ability to sneak a couple of points without making a huge amount of effort. We can say that based on her heart rate and her power, which are, of course, are the metrics that you can get through either looking on screen when we are on the rider, or if you look at Swift Power. So we know she hasn't been wasting energy. It could be anything, honestly. It could be her taking a drink at an inopportune time. It could be bad legs. It could be a bit of a technical dropout. We won't know until about 5 minutes' time. If in 5 minutes' time she's nowhere to be seen, she's obviously had a bit of an explosion and just bad legs today. But I wouldn't be surprised if she does manage to get back on, because for 6%, it is tough. But Davidson is just such a hardy rider, and I've been really impressed by her week in and week out. She's really been improving. So let's give her a bit of the benefit of the doubt. But in saying that, if she doesn't get back on soon, it doesn't really matter what the reason is that she's off the back. Yeah. I mean, it's game
she's
over,
off the
right?
back, yeah. I think it's a bit dangerous for her because she's solo. She's not with a group there to sort of catch up. But one rider I do want to talk about a little bit is this Sarah Ryan. So she's the one with that cool aquamarine helmet, just sitting in second rider here over the top. So she hasn't really ridden in this the APAC League much before, but she's a mum of a 2-year-old. Gotta love the Zwifting mums out there. And she is a cyclist and a runner. I do see she's done a run race. I think that was today, maybe. So, well, yesterday. So great work on her. And she's an ex-rower. And what I know about rowers, they've got some sustained power. And I think this might be my rider to watch today. I think she could come through. She's got the aero helmet. She's prepared to sprint.
Yeah, I like that one. So let's go to the split screen here, because, of course, the men and women are both out on course. And isn't it interesting? 20 kilometres difference, and the difference in bunch size. So we're coming up to one of the sprints for the men for the first sprint here on the Pavé. And, of course, when the women went over there, we saw a brilliant acceleration by Ryan, the rider we were just talking about. And let's see what happens in the men, because it is an opportunity. There's not a lot of distance between the Pavé sprint and then the Aqueduct KOM, which is kind of more of a sprint, really. It's not much of a KOM. There's not a lot of time between that, and so it's a pretty good tactic for riders to go for one and then keep accelerating through to the other one. But the men do have a much bigger bunch, so the dynamics are a bit different. But if we're looking at Sayer from Cryogen at the moment, his heart rate's pretty up there. I mean, 170, you can't say that's just cruising along. And he's ticking into around the 5 watts per kilo just to move along here. And they're clipping along at nearly 50k an hour. So, Anna, it's pretty clear that they're taking all of these sprints pretty seriously. Power-ups are starting to get dropped, and the acceleration is starting to happen.
Yeah, they're coming up very closely to the sprint. You can just see on that map in the top right corner, it's the little green dot there. So they're just going to sort of round this bend, hit some pavers in the little village, and they'll be coming through the sprint, which is pretty short. And I think these guys are starting to get a bit twitchy, sort of, it looks like. They just sort of roll around. Some are surfing the wheels, but it's definitely picked up the pace. 500 watts here on the front from one of the Cryogen riders. So that was a big acceleration, and you can see it just getting a little strung out there at the back. I think people are getting nervous. They know that these are the places where riders will get dropped, and unfortunately I'm seeing a lot of, I think it's TFC off the back, all the yellow jerseys, but it's been opened up here by Blackie. It looks like a Jones here from Zed Sun. Aero power up, he's doing great, 12.5 watts per kg, with Morgan from Wales, a countryman, right behind him on that yellow Tron bike. Will he catch him on the line? I'm not sure he will. He's coming up really fast. Jones here, but it looks like Morgan has just rolled over him. It came out of the sprint, so he just rolled over his countryman. I don't know how well that's going to go in the WTRL Race of Nations with those two on that sprint.
Well, Morgan from DPAC, he had a really good ride at the last scratch race we had in NYC, Everything Bagel. So not surprising to see him have a good acceleration. But Jones from Zsun, that was a very good move. Morgan kind of snuck over the top there. O'Connell, we also know that he's a bit of a standout rider as well. It's, again, interesting, Anna, to consider the tactics, because ZWC Attack, they've been doing an excellent job, and in New York, they were absolutely sensational. But Relentless is the one that we talk about a lot. I'm going to float something with you. Let's just quickly go over those bonus points. Two Welshmen on top, Ed Morgan with DPAC there taking the 3 points. Dylan Jones from Zed's Son taking the 2. Anthony O'Connell, Aero Masters, taking that 1 point in the intermediate sprint. I'll throw it out to you that we talked about a little bit of drama with Relentless and some poaching and trying to get some riders from other teams. At this point in the series, when you're on a team that you don't feel is really representing your abilities, is this where you kind of go on solo attacks and try and go for these sprints, not for the benefit of your team necessarily in the series, but more to kind of put yourself out there on a bit of a talent hunt? You reckon that works, Anna?
Yeah.
Like, hey, everybody, look at me. I've got really good legs. Choose me for next season.
I would love it if the community league was that full on about wanting to get picked for other teams. So there's no money on the line here. This is just pure pride. But we're just coming up to Aqueduct KOM, sort of like that sprint. We've got a ZWC rider out the front with 2 Relentless, Duffy Jr. here and Wilson chasing him down as they're opening it up. Looks like Duffy is going through with huge watts with Yama. There's our stolen rider, Yama, coming through. He's obviously a great pickup from the Relentless team. He's just coming in second, but there is another rider, DPAC. That's got to be a photo finish. I have no idea. It looked like it may have been the DPAC rider with that black Aero helmet, just slightly, but that was a amazing finish here as we watched the replay. So we saw it opened up with Duffy on that yellow Tron bike with another Relentless rider, Yama, just behind him. Then I think if we watch that DPAC rider, Evola, I think just at the end there, pushing up 14 watts per kg, I think he might have edged up both. I think potentially Yama got that. Very hard to see. We'll have to see the prims come up on that one, but that was an extremely tight finish with our mate Grosicki there in a clear 4th on that pink Tron. Great job, Grosicki.
It's funny because as opposed to real life racing, I kind of give these guys personalities that may or may not exist. I feel like it's like seeing the face of a radio presenter, Anna. Like, it just can ruin everything. So I'm not sure I actually want to meet any of these guys that we're commentating on. We've built them up to be superstars. Brian Duffy Jr., I'm super impressed with him. He has got so much acceleration. And I actually reckon he'd be a really good crit rider based on his physiology. But if somebody tells me he's a triathlete, I'll be bummed out because he'll have to figure out
I think he is a triathlete.
Is he really? Stop it.
I think he is.
Me. All right, well, he'd be a good crit rider. Brian Duffy Jr. and his family, he'd be a good crit rider.
His profile shot as him with an Iron Man t-shirt on. So sorry to say, I think he's a triathlete.
Oh, goodness me. All right, let's go back to the women. They're heading onto the Aqueduct for another sprint here. The bunch is pretty small now. How many have we got there? 2, 4, 6, about 15 of them. Good to see Doris Ma there. She's a great Aussie rider that I've ridden with IRL before, and I can certainly tell you she's one of the more motivated riders that I've ever ridden with in the community. She's not one for the chat and the coffee. She's more one for breaking your legs off. So good on her. And this is technically a KOM, but let's take a look at it. I mean, it's 1%. Now it's 0%. I mean, it kicks up to 4. Anna, this isn't much of a climb. It's much more of a sprint, but regardless, 3-2-1 points on the line. Meredith Clark once again sticking it to them. A feather power up being used by Hans Josten. She was also aggressive in this sprint when it was in reverse, but Preston coming over the top. The BRT rider has been absolutely on fire today. Good on her. BRT really sticking it to these bigger teams.
Yeah, BRT is absolutely trying to get these Z Sun riders. You just saw there a Z Sun rider was sitting in second. I think Sarah Ryan came through just in the last metre and passed her. We'll see what the points say, but this BRT team is absolutely motivated to move into the podium spot overall in third, and I think Z Sun need to worry about it because they're having a huge showing today with each of these intermediary sprints, and I can't see many Z Sun riders actually in this main pack. So looks like Ebert has been dropped. She's 7 seconds back now. Looks like there might just be one rider. You can see there on that green Tron representing, yeah, there we go. Ebert's been dropped off, so that's a little chase back just behind. I'm not sure if they'll get back on because that front group is drilling because those BRT riders, super motivated.
Well, they're the opportunities to really drill it. I mean, that's when you hurt legs, is when you don't just go for a sprint, but that you continue going and you almost use the sprint to be a bit of an attack rather than the finish line being that sprint line. So let's just do a quick recap of these bonus points. Erin Preston, you are rocking it, girl. BRT Devil Kittens on 9 points. That's dominant. Iris Hans Josten from Zunderstruck. She's also been very good, particularly on those small little pinches up on the viaduct. Sarah Ryan, our resident triathlete in her aero helmet. Also a Devil Kitten on 4 points. Dana Davidson, she's picked up 3 points. I'd love to see where she is actually. We were talking about her getting dropped. Danette Shaw, another Zunderstruck rider on 3 points. Kath McKay sneaking in for 1 point, the Ace of Cakes rider. She has been very strong in weeks to come. Dana Davidson, oh, look, I gave her a bit of credit. I rate her very, very highly, but she's given up the goat, I think. She is just not happening. Kim Hurst is another one. It's just not their day. It happens, doesn't it, Anna? Sometimes you go out meaning everything to be good and it just does not happen.
I think the problem was she was just alone on that climb. You know, she, as much as she would have tried on that downhill, she had a pack of, 15 in front of her. They would have been moving way too fast. As we can see with the men's screen on the right-hand side, looks like that was just the balloon sprint that they came through. But we'll have a look at the points and hopefully get a bit of a replay on that to see just who came through on that intermediary sprint, which I think, like I thought, is as decisive as I thought they would be tonight. Each sprint has dropped riders off the back, and looks like I've got a counter-attack here from a ZWC rider. There's a lot of little internal, last time, do you remember in New York, Katie, we had all that chit-chat going on with that rider breakaway of 3 where people were giving each other a bit of grief. I think this men's APAC division is that was
great, wasn't it? It was almost like a little bit of fisticuffs. They were a little bit cranky pants with each other. That's great. But I mean, I think you mentioned something before and you said that it's not that they're being paid. And I think sometimes the passion that runs so deep in these community leagues is actually a bigger motivator than any money could be. Let's just take a quick look at the bonus points. Kanji Stinger from Team ZWC Attack on 3 points. Ed Morgan, 3 points. Jacob Wilson, 3 points. So we've had a different winner in every intermediate sprint so far. In fact, we've had 9 different riders take out the 9 points opportunities. So Dylan Jones, 2 points. Canton Zaro on 2 points. And Zaki Yama, he's our stolen rider. Can we call him that? On 2 points. Adam Ottstott, he's on 1 point. Anthony O'Connell on 1. Brian Duffy Jr. on 1. So relentless as they do, they've got 5 riders on points. I mean, that's their thing, right? They're not on the top of the table, but we feel like they should be because week after week they've been incredibly persistent and very consistent. Persistent and consistent. Try saying that 10 times.
Yeah.
And the
I feel like
rider
there's
that
a
wasn't
song
on
in
there
that.
was Grosicki. There is there is somebody, a listener, come on, put that together for us, compose it.
I think what we're seeing here is, so last week we didn't see it, but the TTT actually had Relentless beat ZWC for the first time. So they beat them by 12 seconds, which isn't a lot. And what that means is now ZWC is sitting on 116, Relentless 114. So if Relentless can win today, which obviously they're going to try to do, they've got a great track record on these scratch races, is I think they may end up moving to that top of the table, because if they've got that time trial sorted, then they can keep getting points on ZWC.
Well, and then we've got race on because we've only got a couple of weeks left here, especially with scratch races. I like that. I like a bit of excitement leading in to the back end, and it's coming into Christmas time, so we all need. Oh, and Thanksgiving, of course, for the Americans. But we are in APAC, so there's probably not too many people who are planning on cooking some turkeys. Except in saying that, Brian Duffy Jr. is probably thinking about cooking a turkey over the weekend. It's possibly Thanksgiving's possibly not over the weekend, so I'm sorry if I'm offending any Americans who are tuned in. Us Aussies don't really do that. I love seeing the chat on the right-hand side, Anna.
Us Aussies. Sorry, Katie. Us Aussies. What are you talking about?
Sorry,
No.
I apologize. You're what? Hold on, Anna. Let me just clear this up.
Oh, that's a bit.
Anything that New Zealand does well, Australia claims. I mean, Pavlova, let that be the best example there is. And Russell Crowe, I think that's another one.
Oh, man. Oh, no. You're never going to live that one down.
You can have Mel Gibson, though. You can have him back. Okay, so let's...
Okay.
Before I get myself in trouble here, let's go back to the racing. So we're nearly 22k in. For the men, it's 47k. So they're not even at the halfway mark. It's still a pretty big bunch, but it's whittled down considering there haven't been any major challenges other than intermediate sprints. I find that interesting in itself because we thought that this would be fairly unchallenging and a fairly big bunch sprint, but the women's, that's quite a small bunch now. The men's is quite whittled down at the halfway mark. I mean, this could be playing out a little bit differently to how everybody expected it to. And they're going into your favourite part of the course, the guts, the intestines.
Les intestines. And I've just seen a message come through here from YouTube, so I'll just keep saying it. David here. So he's saying most of the ZWC riders are actually top elites from Japan. So they actually race elite in Japan with a lot of real life wins under their belt. So could be some good riders to watch. We can just see that popping up on screen. So an interesting little tidbit there. Keep an eye on those Japanese ZWC riders because obviously they know what they're doing.
Well, and I do urge any team managers listening to send us some info on your riders because let me tell you, you can Google search down some interesting rabbit holes when you're looking for some info on the riders. So please do send us any details on your teams. We love these facts. We love to know who's an IRL racer and who's a triathlete, but maybe better suited to crit racing. Brian Duffy Jr., I'm talking about you. Just for anybody. I'm the latest.
I feel like there's a weird fangirl thing going on here with you and Brian Duffy, Katie. There's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of love there for Duffy.
It's like a 90210 flashback, and I can't ever remember what that Brian someone Jr.'s name was.
Oh, Brian Austin Green.
That's the one. Oh, I was kind of close, wasn't I? All right. And once again, when I start to blush, I'll throw back to the racing because that's what's important, right? That's why we're here. So they're going through these S-Bens now. Now, we had a question early on, would the S-Bens challenge anything? And our opinion was perhaps it could. It hasn't really seemed to, though, has it? Hasn't played out like that.
No, and I think we saw that this morning, just with the Hino team and the women's race this morning or today, earlier today, was they did a little attack through the S bends and they just they couldn't really make it stick. They could get a few seconds ahead, but people are so motivated at this point, and they almost like people kind of gather a bit of momentum around these corners because they're really pushing the pace out of them. So I don't think it's that easy to get away. Just also to our viewers out there who might be watching, I am interviewing Team Relentless tomorrow for the World of Zwift broadcast. So if you do have any questions for Relentless, their DS or Greg Grosicki, I think, is coming on, let us know. We'll fire off some questions at them, maybe about their sort of poaching strategies and how that's playing out for them.
Yeah, well, the coaching strategy is an interesting thing. I mean, in your experience out there racing, how much do you think the riders go by what is discussed beforehand, kind of the strategy versus what they're feeling and how it's playing out?
It's a really good question because I know for my team, we had a really set in stone strategy for the New York race and it got blown up within the first 3K. And the strategy for tomorrow is going to be let's just see how it plays out and kind of go with how the race goes. So I could maybe tell you on the next one which one worked out better, but I think sometimes you've just got to go by who's doing what and have a look at what's around you. And I think, like I said earlier, you've just got to be so attentive this whole time. And we're already watching the women here. I mean, these guys are going to be really attentive as we see Sarah Ryan move to the front. They're only about just under 5K from finishing this race. They'll be getting nervous. They're out of those little sort of twists and corners over that little bridge a bit further back. They've got quite a big gap now to the group behind, 23 back. As we can see here, the bonus points, Erin Preston, like you've mentioned before, Katie, massive lead. But with Sarah Ryan, also from BRT, in second, and that Z Sun rider in third. And that's really showing the name of today's race has been that battle between BRT and Z Sun. Although, who do you think is going to take it on the line? I've seen great stuff from Erin Preston, but, has she burnt the legs a bit too much? What do you think, Katie? Who's your pick for winning this women's race?
Look, Aaron Preston's been super impressive so far. What we need to consider is that sometimes riders don't actually go for intermediate sprints so much as they kind of just sit in, let it roll, and go for the overall. Preston has clearly got very good legs, but she has burnt through quite a lot of matches so far. Ange McRae, I wish she had a little bit more acceleration than she does. She is improving week on week, though. So, I never ever write her off. I mean, I think she's the biggest improver if you look at the last year, how far she's come. So she might be a bit of a sneaky, but it's really kind of hard to go past Garland, who I think has been really consistent, and also McKay. Kath McKay, she does have a bit of speed in her legs. She knows how to follow a wheel. And week in and week out, she showed that she's got pretty good form. They'd be the riders that I would watch, definitely. In saying that, Jen Reed, the Aero Flyer, has had a couple of really great performances. I don't think there's a standout favourite. I think that they all have an opportunity. What is interesting about this small group, because that's what it is, it's a small bunch, is that they all have quite different characteristics when it comes to the final kilometres of a race. I think that they need to make sure they ride to their own strength and not just roll it in and try and sprint for the last couple of hundred metres. Ange McRae is certainly one that I would say go long and go hard. Kath McKay is another one who I would think could have a really good result if she hit out pretty early. The last thing they want to do is let it become a bit of a cat and mouse, slow affair coming into that final kilometre, because I just think that opens everybody up to danger. I mean, I wouldn't feel confident for any of the riders to really dominate in that way. So this will be a pretty interesting couple of K. So 47K in total. They're at 44.5. So that's only 2.5K to go. I know that there's a couple of attacks happening over in the men's race. Look at that on the split screen. Tanaka from ZWC. Look at that. They are strung out and working hard, nearly 180 heart rate, over 400 watts. It is a tale of two different races if you look at those split screens. Of course, the women are
Yeah, and
heading
they
into the
are.
finish, but let's let's look at this replay here. Anna, ZWC and Relentless are the ones making the moves.
Oh, look at that. IKD, this is they're hitting that big climb here, 8%, and IKD is having a huge turn of pace there with an Evo rider, another Japanese rider right behind, and Grosicki, and then your man Duffy about 1 second back. So they're um they're really pushing, but I think what happens here, which is what we just caught at the end, which I think we'll be able to catch, is Tanaka here just gets caught. I think he has a counter attack that happens, and this is, look at that strung out group of riders behind. You can't even see the riders right at the back of this group. So this has been a major effort from Tanaka. 7 watts per kg here. Around, you can see there, 390 up to, wow, that's almost hitting 400 watts. There we go, 400 up on the top of that climb. That was a massive, massive push from that ZWC rider.
And there's a lot of damage that has happened here. Look at this. And again, Anna, at the beginning, we predicted that perhaps this would be a bunch kick, that the course was not necessarily super exciting. But my goodness me, it has turned out to be quite a cracker so far. They've still got just under 20K left to go for the blokes, but they are certainly strung out. Sam Lindsay, where's he? He was brilliant in New York City. I want to see him come to the fore and make a bit of an effort. So we're coming into the final kilometre now. Anna, for the women, this is exciting. There's a small bunch of them. What a great effort they've made too. And I'm going to say this is a bit of a different bunch than we've seen in previous weeks come into a sprint finish together.
Yeah.
So a bit of unknown.
Yeah, I think looking at the numbers though, Sarah Ryan has the biggest watt output for a 15-second effort. So that's around 740 watts. That's just a little bit more than Davidson, who's been dropped off this pack. So this is going to be an interesting one. BRT highly motivated. Not many AHDRL riders. So they've had not a great showing today. My money is actually on Sarah Ryan. I think she, with that Aero helmet, she's here to do business. And small little pack. It's a really, really tricky finish as well. It sort of veers around to the left, and then you see the little marker for the sprint, and then it has a sharp right-hander with only about 75 meters to go, and that makes it really hard to see actually where the sprint finishes. And I saw this earlier today with the Prem racing. It was sort of better to put in your power up and sprint effort just before that right-hander, but not too much before. A lot of people went too early when they saw the little green dashes on the side of the road. So we're just coming into that last little portion now. They'll sort of do a few little twists and turns. They're going to head under this bridge here, and it's a really, really hard run. And you can just see with the speeds these guys are going, they've really dropped that watt output now. It is going to be that cat and mouse. They're going to look around, and I think those with those high 15-second power outputs will just be hanging in here in the pack, just trying to pick the perfect time. Today it is all about timing.
So we've talked about who is best suited based on power, but the one thing we don't know, Anna, is what power-ups they have. We know that can make a massive difference. Kim Garland, Aero flies. She has been on fire the last weeks of racing. She makes the early move heading into the finish here, pushing over 185 beats per minute. She is flat chat, edging toward that 400
I think
watts.
it's too early.
But it's too early. Preston hasn't gone yet. She is biding her time. Mackay just sitting there. Hans Yosten, let's not write her off. We haven't seen her a lot in the earlier weeks, but she has been on fire in these intermediate sprints as well. This is an open bike race. There are those sprint dots that you talked about. Don't go too early. There's still a few hundred meters to go.
Here we go. They're going to go around a little turn. I think everyone's gone pretty early because they're going to come around this hard right-hander. That was way too early from Preston. So there you see that mistake. There's that right-hander. We could just see the Aero rider coming through now. Clark with the truck power up, coming through to win it, just with Kath McKay in second. And it looks like Sarah Ryan from BRT, they're ringing for today. Coming in third, I do believe. We'll have a look at the replay and the final points, but I think that was it. So amazing little finish there. You just saw Preston went off a little too early, but There we go. So that opens up with Preston. She gets swamped here by Clark from Aero. Perfect time there around that bend with McKay just on her wheel, but it does look like McKay ended up in, I thought she was third, but she might have come second there with, ooh, was it Sarah Ryan or the Z Sun rider? That's going to be a huge impact on points. I think that might have been the Z Sun rider who came away with that. So that's devastating there for Ryan, who was so close, and they'll lose valuable points in that little battle.
That was a great ride by Hansie Austin. She has not been particularly active in the weeks to date, but what a good ride today. She showed herself, especially in those aqueduct intermediate sprints, but it was all about timing, just like it was in everything bagel. We talked about don't go too early, don't go too early. And I think that's what happened a bit. Erin Preston perhaps didn't realise quite how far it was into that finish line. Just goes to show how much course recon can really affect the overall outcome. So we're back to the men now, and this is a much smaller bunch, isn't it? All of a sudden, it is strung out, and the usual suspects, well, we think they'll be hiding in there somewhere, but it's a lot smaller than what we anticipated would be at this point. They've still got 15 odd kilometres left to go. Kenton Zaro, relentless. He's on his own. He needs to hustle to get back on. And he does just as we talk. Ottstott, also relentless. What happened with relentless? Why do we keep seeing their riders chasing back on?
That's an
This is
interesting one.
really a rough race. Look at this. Gaps are opening up everywhere.
Yeah, so this is ZWC who's just pushing this pace. We saw them doing that 1-2 at the top of the reverse petite KOM, and now they're just pushing off the front again. I do want to just note a few of the comments we're having coming through in our YouTube chat. So there is a shout out to Jacob Wilson. So he's the manager of Relentless. He organizes all the crew racing today and is also there adding up all their points manually so we can let them know on Discord. He's a great leader, and he gets up pretty early in the morning as well. So a lot of those Relentless guys up at about 2:45 a.m. to race. We've got Evo Savages with a great turnout today, apparently from Japan, Australia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore. So a great little turnout from those riders. And also, 2:45 a.m. that all the Relentless riders are getting up to race today. So that's commitment to the cause.
It is. I mean, to see when I was talking so flippantly about Thanksgiving, I kind of forgot for a moment that we may have some committed riders on the other side of the planet getting up at all hours to race this league. But that is pretty cool, isn't it? That if you are motivated to do so, you absolutely can. And it is absolutely split to pieces. And this is something that, okay, so let me just backtrack for a second here, Anna, because NYC Everything Bagel, we knew it would be blown to pieces. And it was especially thanks to Lindsay. He blew everything to pieces on that first climb. We expected that. This, do you think that perhaps they've essentially caught them napping? That a lot of the riders might have thought this will be a bit of a shoe-in, won't be too bad? And that's what's brought them undone, because there's literally riders split all across the French countryside.
Yeah, I mean, they're just approaching the Aqueduct KOM here. So this is that short sort of sprint one. So we'll chat a bit about what, my thoughts about what I think's happened. But as you see, can't quite see that name. A great British rider coming through off the front of that pink Tron. He'll just get passed here by the bunch. A few feathers being dropped. Relentless rider moving off to the front. They've been very dominant in some of these sprints as he's coming through, but it looks like another ZWC rider. Wow, with those aero helmets, they're looking really good. And whoa, who is that? They've just come out of absolutely they've been shot out of a rocket. That was Rich there from ZWC. That was some absolutely phenomenal sprinting. Wow, I didn't even see him coming. So this is a ZWC versus Relentless showdown in the men's race today. You can just see, I didn't even see Mitch there. It's about 4 riders back, and you just see him appear right there. He just puts in a huge turn of pace, and that is absolutely blowing apart. And he's got that disc wheel, so he's obviously after all the sprint points. So good that he managed to stay up with this lead pack on the climb with that heavier disc wheel. But as you were saying, Katie, before that intermediary, what I think's happened is ZWC has had maybe a little bee in their bonnet before today's race, and they've come in with a game plan. I don't think they would have liked getting beaten in the team time trial last week, and they've got a lot of climbers. So I have heard just coming through on some of the chats that ZWC is a team full of climbers, and I think they've used that to their advantage, and they've pushed that KOM earlier on, where there were no points on the top, but they've used it to whittle down this pack to what we're seeing here, which is, I don't know, 18 to 20 riders.
Yeah, I mean, Monrich was pretty good in everything bagel, I must say. He impressed me. He had a few accelerations that showed that he was motivated, and he did have a little bit of horsepower. I think a lot of the riders, it's been a bit of a learning experience for themselves. They've kind of been figuring out what they're best at. And as you know, having done a criterium on the weekend, you Zwift legending triathlete, it's a bit of a difference. I think that there'd be a lot of the riders who are IRL races and who are really finding their feet in the Zwift world. So we're coming into another sprint here for the men. They come pretty thick and fast, don't they? I mean, that's another consideration. You really cannot nap for a second. Grasicki, your man, he's on the move. IKD, these are riders we've seen really impressive over the last couple of weeks. But hello, acceleration with a power up. That was
that Monrich
very,
again?
very impressive. I think
Wow.
it was. I think it was.
It was Monrich.
Let's take a look at the points when we can. But yeah, he's got a bit of motivation going, doesn't he?
He's got an unreal turn of pace. I wonder what his 5-second power is, because he just tends to look like he gets shot out of a rocket right in front of everyone. He's not even out of the saddle there. He's just come through with that drafting power up right past Grosicki on the line.
Yeah, that's really impressive riding from Rich. And just as we were talking about him, the acceleration is what impresses me. Yes, he's got the power up. Yes, that drafting boost makes a bit of a difference. Does it allow him to accelerate past in that regard on its own? No, it doesn't. That comes from absolute horsepower and a big set of lungs. So let's just take a look at that setting overall. Monrich, go Aussie, go. Team ZWC attack on 6 points. That is double. That's impressive. Kanji Stinger, that's a great name for a bike rider, on 3 points. Ed Morgan also on 3 points. Jacob Wilson, Relentless on 3 points. Dylan Jones, Smoother Zed Sun on 2. Greg Grosicki, Relentless on 2. Rin Watanabe on 2 points. Canton Zaro on 2 points. Zaki Yama on 2 points. And Otstot on 1 point. We've got a very thick representation from Relentless there, and that's very impressive. It's interesting because a minute ago, Anna, we were discussing the fact that we keep seeing their riders off the back and bridging back on. Perhaps the reason that's happening is because they're burning a lot of matches in those intermediate sprints and then having to jump back on. Oh, look at this. A bit of slam being thrown down. Why are you not working? Whoa.
Look at this. There's a group right behind this pack here that's not that far off. So you can just see there's been an attack off the front here by ZWC again. So not only is Monrich coming through and taking all these sprint points, and I will just say his raw power is unreal. So he rides up above the 14 watt per kg in his sprint. So we really need 15.8 watts per kg, which is higher than any other rider out there. It's huge. So these guys do not want him at the finish because he will outsprint everybody. I will say right now, hands down, if he's in that group, he's my pick. He will outsprint everybody in this group.
Yeah, it's really impressive tactics. And something we've seen over the weeks, I would easily say, is week one, I enjoyed the racing, Anna. We enjoyed commentating it. We said, geez, these women, these blokes, they're racing really well. But as it's evolved, we've seen a real dynamic come out. We've seen a lot of very clear team tactics. We've seen a lot of individuals really shine. But more than that, we've seen quite a depth of talent across this community racing. That's fabulous. And I really, really appreciate the fact that these teams, especially some of them that are lower in the overall team rankings, aren't just giving up the goat and walking away from it. You know, they are still throwing down the gauntlet. A good attack here. It's a pretty tough spot to stay away. He's got 5 seconds. Umichu from Evo, the Japanese rider. Good representation from Japan. So well done to them, having so many riders on the start line. But a pretty hot chase from the back of the pack. But it is, again, it's a smaller bunch again. Every time we go through a sprint, we managed to lose quite a few riders. Sam Lindsay, he's sitting in there. We haven't seen him hit the win today. That's pretty smart riding.
Yeah, it's this strategy they've got playing out. This is very similar to what happened in the men's Prem division. Actually, there was a big breakaway after that last sprint, heading into the finish line, and someone got up to around, I think it was sort of like 8 seconds, and you just wondered how long they were going to leave him out there. And looks like they're going to pull in this Evo rider. But I will just mention there is a little bit of a battle going on between Evo and Aero, so they're only 4 points apart. So Evo is probably motivated to get as many points as they can, just to start to overtake Aero, and I don't see many Aero riders represented in this front pack. So we can just see Amichu from Evo riding at a pretty good watts, but he's been chased down and just caught here by the rest of the pack. So they'll all come together, and I think it's going to be worrying for them because they've got some big hitters in that Monrich who can beat them? Those 2 last sprints have been absolutely unreal to watch. So we do see a little bit of chit chat going on here from the chase group. So they're not really working cohesively. You can see people asking, are you going to work? What's going on? We've got a relentless rider at the back. He doesn't have to do anything. He's got relentless riders in the front pack. So no one here is really going to be working. It looks like a bunch of D-pack riders actually. So they're probably just getting frustrated, but I don't think they will catch on, unfortunately.
Oh, look at this. Fair play for the shout-out. Well-deserved for Jacob, the Relentless Wilson. I love a good nickname. If anybody... Oh, look at that. Brian Duffy and Jacob.
There we go, Katie.
Also very handsome. Yes. Oh, that's one for the ladies, isn't it? Single and ready to mingle.
And ready to mingle.
Oh, wow.
Well,
look, I'm not single and ready to mingle, but good for Brian Duffy Jr.
Fantastic. Duffy, just wait for your Tinder to light up after tonight's race. So that is a great little shout out.
Shout out to anybody looking for a well-credentialed gentleman who's a triathlete and potentially a very good crit rider. There you go. Put that on your Tinder profile. All right, look at this. This is
does the handsomeness make him a faster sprinter? That's the question.
Look,
we're coming into the final kilometres here.
My favourite part about this at all, Anna, is our producer in the background, Nathan. I think he's probably blushing and a little bit horrified at the fact that we're talking about Tinder on a live stream. But that is what you get, Nathan, when you put that up on screen. So fair warning to you. So let's go back to the bike racing, which is why we're all here. And Rich from ZWC, is he at the front, Anna? This is your bloke.
Yeah,
you
Katie,
reckon
tell me, why
he can win in a
attacking?
sprint?
Why would he attack this if he's got huge numbers behind him? Give me a feeling here. I would be confused.
The only reason you would do this is because you feel really good, and there comes, let's not say arrogance, because I feel like that has a very negative connotation, and I don't mean that at all. Confidence. Let's go for confidence. When you are just feeling really good and you move with everything and it's not a huge effort. And I think based on the effort we've seen from Rich today, he's just got really good legs. And often in the Zwift world, a bit more than in the IRL world, I would say, having really good legs translates to an entire race versus having really good sprint legs, but it being a 200K 6-hour race where you might not be fresh at the end. And we've seen this in the women, we've seen this in the men, that when riders are on, they're on. And I think today, Rich is on. And he's working hard and
Wow,
he
look at
thinks that
this.
this is a good opportunity. Grosicki jumping across. This says to me, Anna, that they're worried,
Oh,
that
that was a little
Relentless are
fake
like,
effort though. Something's
oh,
up with
I don't
Grosicki's
know.
power. Are you seeing that? It's going up to like 7, and then it dropped down to 2, and then it went back up to 7, and then now it's at 10, and then it's just kind of jumping all over the show. I think he might have a few technicals, Greg, today. I think that's why we saw him dropping off the back earlier. But this is a danger time, especially if the Relentless rider, one of their top riders, is having a few issues out there. That's like almost having a sort of a flat tire right at the end here. But we've got a Z Sun rider really pushing the pace with Mon Rich. He's got such good numbers. Maybe he doesn't know that it would have been probably more worth it to just stay at the back of that pack and push through at the end. But there's Sam Lindsay as well. We're just watching him, 382. 173 beats a minute. These guys are like not messing around. Not long to go till the end as well. Just under 2K, I do believe. So this is Monrich has just been caught now. So what we do now is burn a few matches. You'd have to say he'd hide in the pack and really just unleash at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think that good legs don't lead to overconfidence because, that's when you get Alaphilippe saluting in his rainbow stripes and not actually winning, and that is not a good day on the bike. So I hope Monrich just takes a bit of a breather here because we know that he does have pretty good legs. Sam Lindsay, he's an interesting one. He's a bit of a wild card, I reckon, because he was brilliant in NYC Everything Bagel. He was very, very strong on the climbs, but that doesn't discount him from having certainly a late attack on this kind of course. And something we also saw in the women's was that you cannot go too early. If you turn that into perhaps a tactic for a non-sprinter, that's an opportunity to go quite early because for the sprinters, it is quite a difficult run in if they do go too much. Now, Rich is right on the back here. Hopefully, he's just taking a bit of a breather. If I see that gap open up at all, I'll get pretty nervous for him, but I think he's doing a pretty good job so far. And he'd certainly be a wheel that I would be hunting for coming into a sprint
Yeah.
finish.
Look at that setup that Monrich has got as well. He's sitting at the back now. He has got the perfect setup for sprinting. That specialized Venge S-Works with the Superfly zip wheel. That's like, he's got to be a very high level Zwifter to get that. I haven't even got that. I think it's like 39 plus or something. So don't know about the facial hair though. That's got to slow you down. But I think he's playing this pretty well now. He's just sitting in the back. Like you said, he probably had the confidence to go, maybe thought there was going to be a breakaway. That almost tells me as well that he is definitely all in for the win. Maybe he thought that breakaway could get away, so he followed it, but now he's like, yeah, all in for the sprint. Let's go. Not long to go. They're just going to cross over a few of these sort of twists and turns, and then head into that main little town like we saw in the women's race. And I'll stake a claim on it now. Those disc wheels are going to win today. So whoever have got those disc wheels, we saw Monrich with one. There's a few other riders in there. The disc wheel will win out in the sprint today for sure.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, bike choice really comes very heavily into play at this point. We've had a question about what is a high heart rate. Anything over 170, you have to assume is pretty top end. For the most part, these athletes, their heart rate normal would be, and there it is from Cadell. Cadell Howie, a bit of a shout out to the Aussie champion, of course, Cadell Evans. Good on you, mate. Would be anything, I would say, Anna, from 170 to 190 would be the normal maximums for most of these riders. So if you see it pushing up towards that, you know that they're really at the top end. We also had a great comment about it possibly not being pronounced Jacob, given the spelling of Jakob. So sorry if it's Jakob. That's a bit of an Aussie twang in there. Yeah, for Jakob, not Jacob. But, there's not really too many names that Aussies don't like to Aussiefy if we get the chance. We're coming into the finish. There's not too long to go. It's all about the timing here. We saw with the bridge here, Anna, the women went at this point. It was too early. When they hit that sprint line, it's still too early.
Yeah, so they're going to come around through this little cityscape, and I think the problem is you just get so nervous and you can't see the finish because of that tight right-hander. So, like we saw in the women's, like you said, so many people went early, and I think it is just you're freaking out a bit. You know, you're coming around, you can't see. You're like, when's that turn coming up? Oh, I'll just drop my power up now, and before you know it, you've been swamped at the finish line. So these guys now sort of just rounding a few of these little right-hand bend here, then it'll go nice and straight for a while, but they still won't see the finish line until they round that more harder of a turn with about 75 meters to go. So you'll see the little green lines on the side of the road on the right hand side, and that's where quite a few would think to drop a power up. I think maybe just wait sort of 50 meters beyond that, do drop it, a little bit before the corner, and then just all in. But you can see here we've got all the big players. You can see Grosicki, a lot of ZWC riders who are set up full aero helmet, full disc wheels. They're in the black and white stripes. We've got Hashimoto from ZWC just moving off the front, and we've seen a few attacks coming here from the back. There's that feather that I talked about. If you drop the feather and you put in a huge turn of effort, that's Mon Rich. You can get a massive gap on the group, which is exactly what he's done. Now, he may make me eat my words by saying it's not good to go early because he could stay away with the power he has as he pushes up to 11 watts per kg. He was up around 14. He's got a huge gap, but look at the tarmac. He's got to cross before he takes that right-hander with about 75 meters to go, and he's going to get swamped, as we saw, way too early. We've got Yama, the pickup from Relentless, but he has been passed there by Stinger. Amazing riding from Stinger. And then we might have to have a little finisher there. It might have been Wilkie coming through in second, but Stinger, that name you liked earlier, Katie, he has put a show on for ZWC.
Well, quite a stinger he has. Mon Rich, he nearly had it. We thought he could pull this off, especially with the dropping of that power up. Just goes to show you cannot go too early. He got swallowed up by that chasing bunch. Yama, he was on the move, but Stinger, the acceleration without the power up is what really impresses me. That just comes from absolute pure power. Relentless, good on you for bringing Days of Our Lives into the Zwift racing for us to commentate on, because it has paid off. Yama for the win there, and that was pretty convincing, pretty impressive. Well, it's a bit of a photo finish, and look at all those and to just validate your bike choice, Anna, disc wheel for the win with Yama.
Yep.
And look at the Tron bikes trailing
all chasing behind.
So,
but look at that
anybody who
there,
thinks
Katie,
it doesn't make too much difference, well, I don't know. This is a
huge difference. Look at that.
Yeah.
Massive. That group behind, there's like 6 riders all within like 2 meters? That's insane. That is an absolutely crazy finish.
Well, and I almost feel as though perhaps some of the riders in that final sprint finish, Anna, didn't really rate themselves. They saw Rich go early. They thought this is all over Red Rover. And then all of a sudden, they're there. They're in contention. They're amongst the finishers. That was a bit of an unusual sprint. I mean, for the women as well.
I watched the Prems earlier today. I've watched these ones. I just don't think there's like a very easy way to pick this at all. 75 meters, you take a sharp right and you can't even see the finish. So you just don't know when to drop it. I want to say, it's talent, but I think a huge part of it is luck and just really, really good timing.
And I think power-ups really come into play. So, the power-ups were designed to give the feeling of the in real life things that could happen and all of the elements that change the racing. I think they actually do a pretty good job. And I think, as we discussed quite a lot back and forth, which power-up is the best, when to use it. I'm going to go back and take a look at those numbers, because I think Rich, with that power-up drop, I think he did a really good job of the acceleration and the sprint execution, but he kind of did it a little bit too early. He went too early. Yeah. I feel, I wanted to yell at him, not yet, not yet, not yet. But again, once you've committed, once you've dropped that power up, that's it. You've just got to commit. And it was a bit too early. We're going to go back and just take a look now. The B men are coming in. Anna, do you think they're going to make the same mistake? Don't go too well. Big bunch here. This is a great group of the B riders here. And Tune Bike Works, Tyso, he's sitting nice and comfortably in. They're clipping along again. This bridge is a big landmark. I think a A lot of the riders feel like when they come under that bridge that this is the time that the sprint starts, but that is too early.
Yeah, too early. And they sort of they do hit this sort of a little bit of a right hand bend and then they go into a big long straight. And I think what happens is they think when they hit the straight that that's the time to start sprinting as we see someone moving off the front here. And yeah, like we saw, in both races, it's just it's all about timing. I believe maybe you see the corner. As soon as you see the corner, I'd drop it and just go for it from that point on. But yeah, it's really tricky. They go through these twists and turns. Here's that bridge coming up you talked about, Katie, as we see a feather being dropped here by Tyso from Tune Bike Works. Very, very early attack and really not pushing up the watts too high. So just around 5 watts. So that was an interesting little maneuver. Didn't really manage to get away, but there's been a 1-2 now with an AHDR blowfly off the front at 12 watts per kg. That is almost exactly what has happened, what we've seen with Monrich, with the feather power up, going early. What's going to happen? Do you think they're going to get swamped again?
Oh, this is a big move by Evans. Look at that heart rate. That's a bit higher than the old average normal high heart rate, pushing toward 200. He's leaving it all out there. I think he's gone too early. He only just passed that sprint line, and look at that bunch racing towards him. Evans, he had a strong start. He's getting swallowed up by this chasing pack, and it is North Endurance. That's Paula from Cryogen. He's accelerating, but he too gets swallowed up. Gee, you just can't go too early here, can you? DM from Aero CT taking the win there ahead of JB from Vision. Vision, good ride by them. They've been really solid the last couple of weeks. But wasn't that just another example, Anna, of go too early and you pay the price?
Exactly, but as we're seeing this happen, I have actually heard that the early attack by Monrich, as we just watch here with the B rider coming through Aero, that was a great little use of an Aero power up with the Vision rider just behind them. They actually gapped it, so there was a bit of a gap between those two in third place with Vision, looks like a Velo Club rider in third. But just going back to a little bit of inside knowledge I just got, which was it was a strategy to put Monrich off on an early attack. So he went early to draw out the sprinters from the pack, and it was always their intention to have Stinger come through from the same team and come through the pack and use his drafting power up for the win. So great team play there from ZWC. And what we wondered what Monrich was doing, well, there we go. It's working for the team.
Well, strategy for the team. I mean, absolutely for the win. They did a great job of that. But talk about a long strategy. I mean, was that the point of using him up in intermediate sprints to make everybody think that he was on the form and going for the finish, like a real dummy play? Because that was brilliant. I mean, if that's what they did, if they set that up from the very beginning, I love it. I love it. It's actually the best tactics I've seen so far. It's a little bit sneaky. It's a little bit clever. I mean, it's a little bit of both. It's great. Good on them. I mean,
I love it.
think we can probably learn from that, can't we?
I think what they're doing is they're sort of they're coming into the race with a whole suitcase full of different strategies, and then as the race plays out, they go, okay, we'll do a few little attacks on the climb, then we'll see what happens. Okay, we've got a little bit of a group like this. Okay, these riders have probably got a DS. Looking at these other power numbers, it's getting this serious now in the community league, especially this APAC racing. This is getting big time, and they're sitting there with their team manager and their DS, and they're working it out. They're doing the numbers, and then you see what happens. They've got a perfectly executed strategy at the end and they take the win.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it really is heating up, and I think week after week, it just keeps getting better. And that goes for the women as well as for the men. The women's racing, we've seen a lot of riders on an individual level really improve week on week. But strategically and within the teams, we've seen that dynamic play out. It's been quite good racing. Let's see if we can take a look now at the charts for today, the results charts. So let's take